Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to explain what I was doing in London over the past few days. It involves climate action and the absolute unicorn of an organisation wanting to use social media and so deciding to ask social media operators how to do it, which is normally a completely alien concept. So let's get into it. But first, for daily news and politics, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So before I get into the details, some background. Regular viewers will know that I tear my hair out to see political parties as well as campaign groups with enough of a presence on social media for me to tell they want to reach an audience, but not enough to actually reach an audience. So I collected together some YouTube channels representing big names in the UK: Keir Starmer, Greenpeace, Stonewall, the RSPCA, the RSPB, the National Trust, Women's Institute, so the Prime Minister and 6 very well-known organisations in British society. They all have YouTube channels with uploads recent enough to tell me it's still active. This chart shows their average daily views over the past 30 days, with mine at the end in red. It's safe to say that all of them must recognise that there is an audience on social media, but none of them think it's worth the effort to learn how to reach it. But why? Last year's Ofcom report showed that 19% of people get the news from YouTube, 18% from Instagram, 15% Twitter, 14% WhatsApp, 11% from TikTok. And this increases massively if you're talking about young people. 41% for Instagram, 37% for YouTube, 33% for TikTok. So a group like Greenpeace, for example, not attempting to use social media seriously, is missing a huge opportunity to reach the public. And these sorts of organisations are only as strong as their connection to the public. And so we come to my reason for going to London for the best part of 3 days. It was very stressful. But I was invited by a group called Bellwethers. Now, they're one of the groups at the South by Southwest in London this week. Bellwethers is a not-for-profit group which is fighting to promote understanding of climate issues and encourage people to green their economies. They've identified some issues in achieving these aims. The first is a lack of leadership in the climate action space. So they work to pull leaders together across all sectors in order to coordinate action. But they also know that informing the public is vital, so they train journalists in how to report climate issues. They gave the example of how tech reporting used to be confined to a geek in the newsroom, and now journalists across multiple sectors understand tech issues as it impacts their work as well. They want to do the same for climate. After all, climate is a part of the economic news, health news, political news, sports news. But they also recognise that an increasing number of people get their news from social media these days, and that is most especially true of young people who are the most receptive to climate action information. The numbers I read out for people going to social media for their news are not fixed. They've been increasing year on year. They were greater in 2024 than 2023, which means there's good reason to suppose it'll be greater still this year and next year, that we're still on an upwards trend. In 5 years' time, the number may be even higher as traditional media falls away. And so Bellwethers decided to invite some social media content creators to a 2-day programme as a two-way process. So they let us know what the current shape of climate action looks like. We had people who've worked on climate policy at the highest levels of government and the UN to give us the background, to let us understand the challenges right now. But it was two-way. They also wanted from us information on how do we reach people on social media. I mean, how often have I pointed to various groups, well-known groups, and asked, why aren't they learning how to use social media? Do they not understand just how many people are accessible on those platforms? Why are these massive groups, famous groups, everyone knows about them, happy to get a few hundred views video? So here's a group who not only recognises the potential audience, but conscious of the need to understand how to connect themselves. They can't just randomly throw things up there. I've never heard of anything like it. Mind you, I have to say I did get a major bout of imposter syndrome while I was there. I was initially thinking there'd be quite a few of us. You know, I thought it'd be like a large gathering. I had this picture of being sat in chairs with lots of other people and people talking to us and, you know, working on various ideas, which was exciting enough. Then it turned out to be quite a small group. There were like 8 of us on the first day and a 9th on the second day. So straight away I'm thinking, okay, so why am I part of a small group? I could understand being part of a larger group of content creators. I was thinking, but there'll be loads of British social media content, because we're not just talking about YouTube, like other social media platforms. And then I found out they were from all over the place. The star content creator was a climate scientist, someone who actually, comments on climate issues from the United States. There was someone from Italy, 2 each from France, the Netherlands, and Germany. So I'm the only one from the UK. I was really confused as to, so why me? And then I found out about the others as well. They weren't just from all over the place. They all had incredibly impressive CVs, awards, major reach. One's done a TED Talk. Another one's done an interview with President Macron. All proper professional operations. Then there's me with my camera in my shed. So I asked about this. So why was I part of such a group? And I was told, well, it's because my audience is influential, which makes a certain amount of sense. So my channel is fundamentally about explaining political decision-making and policy to people who really want to know, presumably in order to use that information. This is not a channel for people who just want to be mad at something. It's not always a rant-free zone, I'll grant you, but it's not a channel I foster for people to be mad at something. It's for people who want to know what's going on in order to inform their own connection with politics. And what I like to do is get people thinking about things, informed about things, so that they can be empowered to do something with that information. So there you are. You are considered influential. There was another funny sticking out like a sore thumb moment as well for me. So on the second day yesterday, so they had lunch boxes out. And there were 2 types. They're both vegan options. And I would have selected one of them. I mean, I'm not really, I don't like vegetables. But, there are some that I can have. And both of them look like, so I was genuinely just sort of choosing them. But I'm not big on veggie stuff. But I'm not suggesting I'm a carnivore, but there's only so many vegetables I can have. But someone obviously saw the dilemma in my furrowed brow, and they sort of discreetly came up to me and said, we've got tuna. She said that with it being a climate conference, they went for plant-based options, right? But she said, but there is there's like some tuna under the counter, so to speak. Tuna. So I was gratefully took the tuna baguette. Still laugh about it now. But in terms of action points, essentially, they wanted to know what we need from them. So for me, it's basically information. Provide me with lots of stats and information and initiatives and what works and what doesn't work, and reliably provable information. Because obviously, people want to know what you're telling them is true. And particularly if you've got someone who's not sold on the whole climate emergency thing, it's like, well, you're telling me this thing, but how do I know it's true? Well, sources. In terms of what I'll be doing, now, it's really important to understand what you can and can't do to promote climate issues. Literally every content creator there, myself included, said, well, the audience is actually a potential challenge. You cannot just go off-piste and produce content for a different audience. So let's say I really wanted to get into it and I wanted to do a very diverse mix of climate issues content. I would do an extra channel for that. Maybe that could be the science channel I've wanted to do for years. You wouldn't try and crowbar it into a channel that's for a different audience. But in terms of this channel, there are still opportunities. There are 2 options for bringing in climate content. Now, I have discussed climate issues before, even recently, in the context of British policymaking now. So I recently debunked Reform's net zero statements last month, and I'll continue to do things like that. But how do you deal with climate in a way that fits with my audience, you guys? As I see it, there are 2 ways. And both ways have to link it with British politics, or it's an instant loser. The first is to do climate information videos linked to policy. The second is to do my videos as normal and identify opportunities for explaining a climate emergency link. For example, when I was a teacher, we were constantly told, as part of our lesson planning, look for opportunities to embed certain core skills into our lessons, typically literacy, numeracy, oracy, right? So you just planned your lessons as you would, then you'd go over them and you would ask yourself, can I develop any of these key skills at any point in this lesson, right? The same can apply here. So give you an example. A couple of years ago, we had a knackered tomato harvest in Spain, didn't we? And it meant we had virtually no tomatoes in British supermarkets. Our idiot Tory Environment Secretary at the time told us to eat turnips instead. Do you remember? I called them Brexit tomatoes. Now, I focused on the Brexit element there. We were the customer of last resort, and because there weren't enough tomatoes to go around Europe and we were the last in line, we mostly did without. But Brexit stopped us getting tomatoes in our supermarket, but it didn't knacker the harvest. It wasn't the reason why there weren't enough tomatoes to go around. That was climate change. So a video that was essentially about how Brexit has led to empty shelves can still include a short section on the impact climate change has had on the lack of tomatoes in Tesco's. So those are the two ways that I'm likely to be doing it. I'll be looking to try a few things out over this month and then develop them from there. That's very exciting. I mean, climate action is the single most important political cause in every country in the world, UK included. So I'm really fired up to getting involved. But that being said, there is like an extra challenge for me. See, there are two things about people most active in the climate infosphere. Firstly, it's mostly young people who are receptive to climate action information. That's obvious. You don't need to be told that, do you? Second, however, it was mentioned that it's really mostly women. So the first one, as I say, is obvious. I was not aware that there was a massive gender imbalance. But after being told that, see, there were two general South by Southwest talks on climate issues that I attended while I was there. And on both occasions, after knowing that, I looked at the audience and my goodness, yes, almost all women. So I'm thinking, okay, the people most receptive to this are generally young and mostly women. So what's your audience like, Phil? It's mostly middle-aged to elderly and 90% male. I may need to be tricksy. But still, just the concept of a major organisation thinking, we need to get through to people on social media. Maybe we should work with people on social media to do that. Just blows my mind. If only more organisations, including political parties, would join up their thinking like that. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.